Huge disclaimer before we continue. This video is going to be me talking about a French weapon.
French!
Yes, I know, as much as I hate to say it, but because it's actually reliable, I think we can give it a pass, despite being a French weapon, so viewer discretion is advised. The Famas is an incredibly versatile assault rifle that is able to be effective against every single enemy you can practically think of, except for bulldozers, but I will get into that in a little bit. Now, do not expect me to whip out some document or like a very huge chart on how the damage works or how the rate of fire works or anything. Do not expect me to be very philosophical about this shit, alright? Because, for one, I am doing the bare minimum of this shit. Do not expect me to put in the most effort into this shit, alright? So, the way I'm going to be talking about the effectiveness of the Famas is very simple. Unlike the other weapons I'm maybe going to talk about in the future, if you people actually like this, instead of saying like, oh, it takes one hit to like kill a single enemy, I'm going to actually determine it by a burst, because this weapon shots only at burst. You can't really necessarily change this into full auto or single fire. You are mainly stuck at 3-round bursts, so yeah, the way I'm going to determine how many hits it takes to kill an enemy is going to be with burst shots. So, the Famas is an assault rifle that is able to kill both light and heavy units in the head without edge with one singular burst shot, or 3 hits, but I'm mainly going to only say 1 burst. For body shots against lightweight enemies, it only takes approximately 2 bursts to kill them. Meanwhile, for heavies, it takes approximately 3 on the body. The damage drop-off for the Famas comes in at 20 meters. Anything above that, as long as you have edge, I tested this with edge, and I don't know if this also applies without edge, but who really tries to fight enemies in the distance without edge? But regardless, let's not get any bullshit theories. But if you try to hit enemies beyond 20 meters, the damage drop-off is going to come at that point, meaning you're not going to be able to one-burst enemies in the head. As long as you're in 20 meters, you're able to one-burst them in the head without having any problems. This is a very good rifle, as it's both effective at practically almost every single range, except for longer range, obviously. But there will be times where you're unable to hit 3 bursts in the head because of how often the weapon causes a stagger. If you're able to land your hits, even if the enemy does get staggered, then this assault rifle is really good for you. As well as the ammo pickup rate, and as well as the amount of ammo you have in reserve is also pretty good. Running out of ammo with this thing is practically not an issue. And even when you do have face-to-face, it doesn't really practically matter, because it doesn't really reduce the fact that it takes the 3 hits to kill a heavy, and as well as 2 bursts for the body. So stay away from face-to-face as much as you can. It is also another assault rifle that is able to pierce through a shield's visor, and it takes approximately 2 bursts to kill a singular shield. When it comes to bulldozers, this is where the real problem comes in for the Famas. The Famas, it takes approximately 8 burst shots in order to kill a bulldozer if you're hitting them on the faceplate, and if all the burst shots land on his head. So that's where the real problem comes in. The only recommendation I'd say against a bulldozer is having the machine pistol with you because of its high rate of fire and as well as a really good ammo capacity size. And yeah, that's pretty much all I can really say. There's really not much else to say about the Famas other than it's an effective assault rifle that is able to be used against practically any range. If you grab this skill with you, you're pretty much just got yourself an assault rifle that is literally and amazing. Yes, I know there are assault rifles exist that is able to one-shot, but those are practically boring, so we're going to ignore those entirely. So, let's get into it. So, what about the recoil? There's really not much recoil to the weapon other than like a bit of a horizontal recoil and as well as a bit of a gun kick. So any sort of modification that reduces the gun kick and as well as horizontal recoil is very necessary. When it comes to the handling of the weapon is pretty good. The aiming down sights, the switching, transitioning from sprinting to firing is also pretty fast. Oh fuck, I had a stroke. Is also pretty fast. Excuse me, I had a bit of a stroke. Anyway, but the weapon handling is very good. Even when you do have modifications that slow down the handling of the weapon, it barely affects it whatsoever. The only modification you should really be focusing on are the magazine size. If you're running ammo funnel and as well as replenish, running the compact magazine is pretty good because it increases the ammo in reserve and as well as the ammo pickup rate. The reload speed of the Famas is okay. It's not fast nor it is too slow. It's solid. There's really not much else to really say about it. But there's really nothing wrong with running quick reload or the quick pull mag. if you're not planning on running replenish or ammo funnel for that matter, you can always bring in an extended magazine. Considering the fact that it can one burst the enemies very easily, you don't really need to like question yourself, do I really need a small magazine size? Because it doesn't really matter, because it takes away only 5 bullets from the magazine, unlike some of the other compact magazines where it takes like either 10 or 15 bullets from the magazine, which is kinda absurd. I'm looking at you, Scar, you piece of shit. Anyway, so, what are the main modifications you should be prioritizing? Well, like I said, the handling is pretty good on the assault rifle. You don't really necessarily need any modifications, except for horizontal recoil and as well as gun kick. That's pretty much it, all I can pretty much say. When it comes to hip firing with the Famas, it is very effective. It literally has such a tight spread, you'll practically not even notice it. Because I'm someone that comes from CS, I usually run a Hipfire build, and let me tell you, hip-firing this baby is absolutely phenomenal. But let's talk about the cons that this assault rifle has. Because there's a delay when it comes to shooting the rifle, there will be times where that little bit of delay is going to make a very big difference, because the Famas is not really particularly that effective against enemies that are more widened up, to say, like that are more spread out in the environment, because unlike the other assault rifles where you're able to control when you can fire at your command, the Famas is a bit of a weird one because it takes a little bit of time to actually try to shoot the other enemies. Meanwhile, with the other assault rifles, you can just pretty much just shoot them instantly. The only time that there is a delay is you fixing your aim. You aim to the other one. Meanwhile, with the Famas, even if you do manage to fix your aim onto the target, there's that still split-second delay before the Famas can shoot. So the best way you can really use the Famas is behind cover most often, because this is not really particularly a good weapon if you're planning on running and gunning a lot, if you're planning on putting yourself in a bit of a out in the open. But the Famas is more or less focused on shooting enemies with cover. You're more likely relying on cover to be able to shoot the enemies, because if there are a lot of them in a singular room, then you're pretty much just going to lose a lot of armor or a lot of health. But what about bulldozers? I did mention that it takes a long time to kill a singular bulldozer. The best way you can deal with the bulldozer is very simple. If you see a bulldozer that is like a little bit further away, one thing you can do is hide behind cover. Peek, shoot, and go back. Peek, shoot, and go back. Because there's a split-second delay before the bulldozer actually starts shooting, which I'm not entirely sure if this is an intended feature or this is an actual bug. But every time when a bulldozer sees you, there's a small delay before they actually shoot you. And because the Famas has a small delay after every shot, you can use it as an opportunity to fall back, re-peek, shoot, and fall back. Thus, the dozer does not do shit, unless the bulldozer decides that he's had enough of your bullshit and starts running towards you. And that's where the real problem comes in, because the Famas is slightly weak with the face-to-face confrontations. But where does this weapon come in most effective? Well, when enemies are grouped up together, oh boy, you're looking at an assault rifle that is able to shred through enemies like butter. And because the rifle shoots in a burst, you're more or less going to run out of ammo very frequently on your magazine. So either having a quick reload hit or an extended magazine as well as a quick pull mag will definitely help you out a lot. And yeah. There's really not much else to say about the Famas other than it's an effective of a rifle that is able to be used against every single enemy you can practically think of. Zappers, cloakers, lightweights, heavyweights, shields, but except for bulldozers. That is where the only problem really comes in. And yes, I know it is very weak against body shots, but consider the fact that PayDay 3 actually requires you to genuinely aim. Mind you, unlike PayDay 2 where you can just turn off your brain and just shoot wildly and still kill, I'm looking at you, body expertise, you piece of shit. So, I forgot to mention, when it comes to comparison, the closest weapon I can think of that is very close to the Famas is the Car 4. So, there is actually a bit of a difference between the Car 4 and as well as the Famas. The closest thing I can somewhat think of the difference between the two is that the Famas focuses more on singular target and having a much more faster time to kill. Meanwhile, the Car 4 focuses more on dishing out a consistent damage on multiple targets. I'm not really saying that the Famas is also not good at doing that, but when it comes to dishing out consistent damage, the Car 4 is much more better. But the Famas has a faster time to kill because of its significantly higher base damage. So there is some bit of difference here. The Famas is better at enemies that are grouped up, meanwhile the Carrefour is better when enemies are sort of widened out or spread out, because you are able to control of your fire, or like the Famas where you are forced to shoot in a burst. So yeah, another thing I should also mention is that the Carrefour has a much more horizontal and vertical recoil, and as well as a bit more gun kick to it, and it's also much less accurate when it comes to hipfire shooting. So yeah, there's some bit of difference. Carrefour for consistent damage and as well as effective against enemies that are widened up and as well as spread out. Meanwhile, the Famas is much more better at time to kill on single targets and as well as enemies that are very much grouped up together. So there's some bit of difference here and there. And it's also much more better on mid-range. Anyway, so what can I pretty much say about the assault rifle? It is very effective for when enemies are grouped up together, but when there's enemies that are like spread out, that's where the rifle's weakness really comes in, because of that sheer delay. You're not able to dish out damage very quickly in a shorter amount of time like the other assault rifles, like the AK, the Carrefour, and as well as the Northwest, with their high damage and high rate of fire. But with the Famas, it's sort of complicated. It has the highest rate of fire, sure, but that little bit of delay is really going to mess you up, because if you're fighting in a room filled with cops and you don't back out with each shot, you're definitely going to take a lot of damage, so you have to be very cautious of that one. The best way I can say of how to use the Famas is just rely on cover a lot. Shoot and go back, shoot and go back, shoot and go back. That's pretty much all I can say. Yeah, there's really not much else to it. When it comes to sound and animation, it is absolutely phenomenal. It sounds crunchy, it sounds crispy, it's very smooth. The animations and as well as the inspect, everything about the assault rifle is pretty good. The only complaint I can really say is, for one, it's French, and for two, I can't use the cool-ass bipod that looks absolutely fragile as shit. I mean, come on, look at this thing. It looks like it's about to break in every bit in 5 different pieces. Come on, it's French-made, for God's sakes. But anyway, I hope this video helped out on how you can understand the weapon entirely. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that for some of you that are actually genuinely curious on what type of Famas this is called, quote-unquote, the Famas Valoris, or in English, the Famas Upgraded. It's pretty much just the Famas back then from PayDay 2, but a quote-unquote upgraded. Hence the name, Famas Valoris or Famas Upgraded. It's basically the more modernized version of the Famas. Imagine the AK-47, but then they decided to make the AKM, which is basically more modernized. That's basically it. So, yeah. I don't have anything else to say besides thank you for watching. If you actually enjoyed any of these types of videos and want to see on other weapons, a comment, I don't know, Balkan time or something. Just anything, just, I don't know. Anyway, now if you excuse me, I'm going to go drink myself to sleep. Goodbye. No, I'm not alcoholic. I don't drink alcohol. I'm actually a good person. For once, I think. Seriously, I've never drank alcohol in my life, so I tend to stay away from it because I do not want to be in a position where I either cause some unnecessary chaos or be the most embarrassing person to ever live in human history. So, yeah. Goodbye. I'm gonna go drink myself to sleep with an energy drink.